Welcome back, everyone, for yet another interesting session. In today's session, we are going to talk about how to draw an ER diagram. So already I've posted a video on what is cardinality ratio and one more video on how to use crowfoot notation. If you have not watched those recordings, I would recommend you to go watch them before you watch this particular video. So you already know that we are doing a case study on online tutoring system. In part one, we just discussed about the case study and did a requirement analysis. Then we identified the entities, attributes, and relationships. Then we identified the primary keys and foreign keys for each entity. Now, the next step is to draw the ER diagram based on the document that we prepared so far, which is your identifying entities, attributes, and relationships for our online tutoring system, the Code Plus Tutors. So here we came across the entity student, its keys, tutor, session, payment, and one associative entity, which is called enrollment. Correct. Now, let me show you how to draw the ER diagram for this particular case study. So, we'll be using this document that we prepared in the previous session as the input to our ER diagram. So there are several tools using which you can draw the ER diagram. You have Lucidchart, Draw.io, Microsoft Visio, which is prominently used. And other than that, there are several other tools as well. You could use whatever tools you wanted to, but towards the end of your assignment, you are recommended to convert that diagram into a JPEG or any PNG or any proper format and have it so that like whoever is reviewing your diagram, they do not have to install that particular software to run your diagram. I hope that's clear to you. So now let's go on. So for this example today, I am going to use Lucid Chart. As I told you, there is no restriction that you have to use only this particular tool. You can use any tool of your choice and just make sure you submit the diagram as a PNG or a JPEG format. Okay, so now coming on to here. So how do I draw the diagram? So I just logged into Lucid Chart app and in the web page, and I am going to click on blank diagram. Okay, so I'm just going to use the free version of it, and let me give my diagram the name. Let me call it as entity relationship diagram for online tutoring system. So now you have bunch of shapes available. Let us click on more shapes. And here already we could see this entity relationship. If it is not prompted for you, you can search for entity relationship in the search box. Okay, so now I am selecting that and I'm clicking use selected shapes. So now we got the entities here. So there are different versions of entities you can use. So you can put entity and just the fields, or entity, the key and the fields, entity, field, and what data type it's going to be. Or you can have entity, the keys, which is your primary key, foreign key, the field, and what type of data it is going to contain. So I am taking this particular format right now, and which is going to contain the entity, key, and the field. Okay, so here we can say how many fields it's going to contain. So in our case, one, two, three, four, five, six fields for the student. So let me say the number of fields is six. At any point of time, if you wanted to change your shape, you can very well go here and do it. Okay, so now let us do this. And let me better maximize it for an easy view. So this one, we are going to call it as student. And if you look at the table, the fields are going to be student ID. So make sure that your entity name is in uppercase and your column names, it is up to you. I try to keep it in lowercase. So student ID, the next field is going to be name. The next field is email, password, address, phone number. So here, if you see, let me zoom it a bit so it'll be clear for you. Okay, so here my student ID is going to be the primary key. So you can put the letters PK to denote a primary key, or you can put it as primary key itself in full. It's totally up to you. None of the other fields have the key here. So I'm just deleting off the word key. So like this, we have to create an entity for all the entities that we identified here. So the next so here there are no foreign keys, so I'm not putting any foreign key. The next one, if you see, let us look at the relationship. So now we created the student entity, we created its attributes, we marked the primary key as well. Now, coming on to the relationship, student and session have a many-to-many relationship, which is broken down by an associative entity called enrollment. So now let us go ahead and create the enrollment entity to be the second one. So for that, let us scroll through the document and go to the enrollment. So here, if you see 1, 2, and 3, you have three fields. So let us keep it as 3 itself. So let me name it as enrollment. So this is going to be student ID, session ID, and enrollment date. Okay. So now if you see the student ID and session ID are both primary key as well as foreign key. So let me mention PK, FK. Okay. So PK is for primary key and FK is for foreign key. Now this enrollment date, I can take it off. Okay, so we are done with the second entity. We have already done our first entity. This is our second one. Is this clear to you so far? Okay, very good. So now what we are going to do is this enrollment is connected to student and session. So on the right hand side, let us create our session entity. So for that, let us go. The reason why I'm going back and forth is that when you know the relationship and structure your entities accordingly, when you mark the relationships, it'll look clean and neat rather than randomly placing the entities. So now coming here, the third entity is going to be session. And session has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fields. So let us go and create 7 fields for it. Okay, and and I am just doing it in lowercase, but as I told you, you can do it in whatever case you want, but the entity name, make sure it starts with uppercase. So here also you can have your columns that start with uppercase. So duration, fee, description, tutor ID. So here, if you scroll through it, the session ID is going to be the primary key, correct? So let us put PK here, and then there is a typo. I think it got auto-corrected. It's tutor ID. Okay, so foreign key is going to be your tutor ID. Let me go ahead and remove the remaining keys. Like this, for your case study, whatever entities you have identified, you're going to go ahead and create all those entities, and you will be marking their primary key, foreign key, and the fields. If you're interested, you can also have its data type. Okay, fine. So now from the session, when you see session and tutor have one-to-many relationship. So which means below session, let me bring in the new entity, which is called tutor. And so for that reason, let me go to the tutor. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields. So let me mark it as 5 and let me give its details. So tutor will have tutor ID, name, email. Oh, there's one more, so I have to mark it as 6. Email, address, phone number, areas of expertise. I'm just trying to increase the size of the table or entity. Okay. So now coming here, let us look at the key. The primary key is your tutor ID and there are no foreign keys. So let me leave the tutor ID and remove the keys. We just have one more entity to go, which is your payment. Okay, so once when we are done with that, immediately we will start working on the relationships. Okay, so now when you talk about tutor and session will have a relationship. The last entity is going to be your payment. So where do I put it? Let's see, payment is connected to the session and to the student. So in that case, let me bring that payment table here. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It has 6 fields in total. So let us say payment. So we will have payment ID. Let me zoom it again. Student ID, session ID, amount, date, payment method. I've slightly increased the size of it. And now coming on to the keys. Payment ID is going to be the primary key. Your session ID is a foreign key. And student ID is also a foreign key. So let me remove all others. Done. So now we have successfully created all our entities. Correct? So let me increase the size of it. Okay, fine. So now let us see what we have done. Let me align it so that you could see them all in one place. So here if you see, you have student, enrollment, session, tutor, and payment. Correct? Let me make it to 65. Okay, perfect. So now you have them. You can align all the entities so that they have equal spacing. So not to waste time, I'm skipping that part. So just make sure that your diagram looks neat and clean. There is enough spacing between all entities. I would recommend that the spacing is uniform if possible. Okay. So this is going to be my table set. Just because like I am doing a screen split and doing it, I'm just trying to keep them close to each other so that you could see them all clearly. Okay, fine. So now coming to this is what we have done so far. Right. Now comes the important step where we are going to do the relationships between these entities and we are going to use the crowfoot notation. Okay. So now coming on to this one, So let us go to the beginning of the Word document. Okay, let's start with the student and let's talk about the relationships. Student and session have many to many relationship. This many to many relationship is broken down into two one to many relationship. So from student to enrollment is one to many relationship. So how do I draw it? So when I bring it closer, when you do you see a blue circle, filled circle? So from there, I can drag it to the next one. So this is a one-to-many relationship. Okay. So now from enrollment to session, it is a many-to-one relationship. So let me go from the session and take it to enrollment. See, from enrollment to session, it is going to be many to one relationship. Okay. And then student and payment have one to many relationship. So let us go to the student to the payment. It is going to be one to many relationship. Correct. So now we have completed all the relationships in the student. Now let's go to the tutor. Tutor and session have one to many relationship. So let us go to the tutor. So from tutor to session, it is one to many. Correct. So from tutor to session, it is one to many. Okay. Now, that's the only relationship here. So that is done. Let's move on to the session. So when you move on to the session, you have again student to enrollment is one to many. We have already done that. Student to enrollment has a one to many relationship, and then session to enrollment is one to many relationship. Correct. And then session and payment have one to one relationship. So from session, I'm just trying to get the focus for relationship. So session to payment, but it is one to one. But what you see here is one to many. How do you change it? You click on it and it says one side, one endpoint, it is one endpoint, it is many. Change it to one again. So now do you see it is a one-to-one relationship. So now from session your enrollment is also done. Session and payment is also done. Correct? And now when we come to the payment, it says payment to session has a one-to-one relationship. Yes, we have done that. Payment to student is going to be many to one relationship. That also works. So fine. So now moving further, the last one is enrollment, which is already done. Enrollment to student is many to one. Enrollment to session is many to one. That is accomplished, which means we have done our ER diagram, but still there is place for improvising it. So where are we going to improvise? That is what I'm going to show you. So now let me maximize this and let us talk about it in detail. So this is the ER diagram that we have come up so far. Correct? This is complete, and you have your student enrollment session, payment, and tutor. You have created all the entities. You marked all its fields. You marked whether which all fields are primary key and foreign key. In addition to it, you also did the crowfoot notation, and you have shown what kind of relationship it is. Perfect. So now, what next? There is one last step that I expect you to do here. The step is that if you look at the cardinality, it just gives you one cardinality on each side. If you recollect what we learned in the crowfoot notation as well as in the cardinality ratio video, we can specify the minimum maximum cardinality on both ends. So that is what we are going to do. We are going to do the minimum maximum cardinality. So when you talk about one student, so one student can have many enrollments, that is fine. Now, one student, what is the minimum enrollment they should have? If there is a student in my online tutoring system, is it mandatory for that student to enroll in a session? Not really, right? Only when the student has a need, he'll enroll for a session. If he doesn't have a need for this particular time, he'll just stay as a student in our system but not enroll into any classes, which means my student, the minimum enrollment is 0, the maximum enrollment is many. So how do you do that? So when you click on it, do you see that it gives me the relationships here? So in place of many, I'm going to say 0 to many. Do you see that it got fixed here? Perfect. Now, one enrollment should have minimum how many students. If there is a enrollment, that is always linked with a student. You cannot have an enrollment without a student. Am I right? Good. So in that case, it is a one, minimum one and maximum one. So I use this notation, which has two lines which indicate minimum one and maximum one. The open circle here indicates it's an optional relationship. So it is 0 and then the maximum. Okay, now we are going to do for the next one. Coming on to an enrollment and a session. If there is an enrollment, should it have a session for sure? Yes, an enrollment cannot stay without a session or without a student. So I am going to make it as minimum one and maximum one. And if there is a session, should it have an enrollment? So when you are creating a session, it is an expectation that it should have at least one or more students. If it's a one-on-one session, then there will be one student. If it is a group session, it will have one to many students. Correct? So it is understandable that it should have minimum one student. So here we put a notation such that it is minimum one and maximum many. Now, coming on to your session and payment. If there is a session, the session will have a payment for sure. And if there is a payment, the payment will be associated with the session for sure. Am I right? So in that case, both of it will have a minimum one and maximum one. See here in this endpoints, this denotes one side of the relationship and this denotes the other side of the relationship. So I make it as min one and max one for both the ends. Okay, so now coming on to the session and tutor. So if there is a session, will there be a tutor? Yes, of course. Without a tutor, you cannot have a session. So the minimum is going to be one tutor as well. And if there is a tutor, should he participate in a session? What do you think? Not always, right? Because the tutor will create a session only when a student approaches it. If there is no student at a point of time, there will be no session for the tutor. So, in that case, the tutor's relationship with session will be minimum zero and maximum many. Okay? And now, coming between the student and payment. Okay, so here one student can have minimum how many payments? So if there is a student, is this mandatory that the student should make a payment? No. The student will make a payment only when he is enrolled with sessions. So it will be zero is the minimum and many is the maximum. But if there is a payment, it comes from a student. It cannot survive without a student, so it's going to be minimum one and maximum one. Is this clear to you? So now we have done all the cardinalities. If you wanted to make it more meaningful, you can give a text here and indicate what type of relationship it is. Student, how do we say? We can put a verb that indicates a relationship between the two entities. So, student has enrollment. So, now if you see, you have that has in the relationship line. So, student has enrollment. Coming here, student makes payment. Okay. Payment session includes payment or session needs payment. Correct? Tutor takes session. Okay. Enrollment belongs to session, or what else can we say? Yeah. Enrollment belongs to session. So, when you put these relationship words, it makes more sense to your diagram. So, when I read the diagram, student has enrollment. Enrollment belongs to session. Session, okay, when we read it in that angle, it'll be session taken by tutor. Session needs payment. Student makes payment. So that makes it more meaningful. So once when you're done, you can, do you see this? You can export the document into Visio or as a CSV file if you wanted to get the data. What I am doing is I am saving it as a JPEG file. Okay. See, I'll get a clean diagram like this. I can just download this particular diagram. Look at it. See how clean the diagram is, right? So this is what I expect from all of you So create your diagram using any tool, but download it as a JPEG file or as a PNG file so that the teachers do not have to log into UserChat, Draw.io, or various other tools to look at your diagram. And this is just an understanding on how to convert your entities, attributes, relationships that you identified into an ER diagram with Crowfoot notation, which has the min max cardinality specified. So if the teacher asks you for an added notes explaining what you have done in the diagram, just do it. So read the teacher's instructions on the assignments given and accordingly do your assignment. So I hope this video is clear to you. I am planning to introduce more videos. So subscribe to my channel and also enable the notifications so that as and when I post a new video, you will be notified about it. So good luck on this ER diagram assignment. I hope you all understood it. I'll see you soon and in the next interesting video. Take care. Stay tuned. Bye bye.